This is Gonf, a player who joined my Minecraft server about 4 years ago. He gained a following as a religious prophet, whose execution inspired a global revolution and war. But even now, players on this server are still worshipping him through a lot of change, spanning the rise and fall of empires, wars, and the apocalypse. I'm Stony, and today we're looking at the story of the Gonfist denominations based on this diagram. It is finally time for you to take the leap and join our Minecraft Java server at the IP play.stoneworks.gg. This diagram spans over 4 real-life years, across 3 generations of Minecraft worlds. First, Jagdis, then to the twin worlds of Rathnir and Eldham, then to the current world of Abexilas. When the older worlds collapsed, most people migrated to the new one, so there's a lot of continuity between them, which is how we get a single religious tradition like Gonfism spanning several generations. Gonf is a player who is said to have never spawned in like a normal person, instead having materialized on the canopy of a dark oak forest. He began preaching and doing public works for others, but also shitposting and being annoying, until he had a small band of devoted followers. But the world of Jagdis at this time was plagued by a band of violent marauders called Crab Season, who would go from town to town, sacking and looting everywhere they could. And when they heard what Gonf had been saying, they tracked him down, destroyed his village, and killed many players and villagers there. Gonf fled into the desert, seeking refuge at a nearby cabin from one of his students, but he was turned away, for they had previously argued, and the student was afraid of Crab Season. So the crabs captured Gonf, built a wooden cross behind him and an altar to their blood god, and they executed him there in front of many onlookers. This enraged the nations of Jagdis, who saw this martyrdom as the final straw. So they gathered their armies together in a single fort, and when Crab Season attacked to sack it, they killed and defeated them once and for all in a dramatic battle. And on the 3rd day after Gonf's death, he returned to Jagdis and gave his final blessings and sermon before ascending up to heaven. This is all 100% true, by the way. The players both purposefully and accidentally acted out the major beats of the Christian gospel. But the particulars and that massive crab war make this epic of Gonf very intriguing. So subscribe to this channel because a video on that in-depth story of Gonf is in the works right now. After Gonf ascended to heaven, his cult following evolved into bishoprics of Gonfist communities in their hometowns. Some wrote gospels based on their memories of his teachings, others focused on the story of the war with the crabs, and some made art of the events to convert non-Gonfists. Some of this literature is actually still preserved on our server wiki. This was not one unified church, but a loose collection of excited people who were doing this creative work on their own. They were ultimately trying to repackage the story and teachings of Gonf in a way that made sense to them, competing for recognition and legitimacy. I think you'll notice that the biggest moments of new, innovative symbols, ideas, and traditions always come when everyone is super excited together. So frankly, I think Gonf was special for being a likable and kind player who could just get everyone excited together. But as all this was happening, the world of Jagdis was suddenly destroyed. No one exactly knows how or why, but it had something to do with this symbol here. The players of Jagdis fled to the new world of Rathnir, and some to the later opened world of Eldham. The settlers started establishing new towns and local religions, and the influence of Gonf slowly began to die down. At most, he was being canonized as a saint in some new religions. In the city of Not Venice, the player Starlord123 canonized Gonf as a saint. And fun fact, Starlord is the last remaining player who met Gonf in Jagdis that still plays on the server to this day. In the famous nation of Yumeru, the founder's story studio witnessed a miracle where Gonf came down from heaven to give him a special holy piece of armor. So Gonf was still remembered in people's traditions, but Gonfism itself was only maintained in a couple very complicated ways. This is where we have to talk about my in-game character, Stony Stoner, and the in-game NPCs that players began role-playing as, the villagers. As the story goes, Stony Stoner was the first Jagdatian to step foot in the world of Rathnir, and his goal was to clear the way for the migration of players to this new world. Claiming to be acting upon the charge of 3 mysterious gods, Stony Stoner committed a genocide against the native villagers by tying up dozens of every hostile mob to himself and sweeping them over the land like a great brush of death. Stony kept a handful of villager librarians, though, whom he trapped and forced to write down their folklore in a series of books compiled together as the Player's Book, which survives in parts till today. But many villagers survived in Rathnir by retreating underground and hiding from the colonizing players. There were Gonfist villager players in Jagdis, though, so when they came to Rathnir and Eldham and adopted what was left of the native villagers' tradition, they lightly influenced this lore with Gonfist ideas. So on the left here, we have Gonfism surviving solely through Stony, who personally knew Gonf and witnessed his story. This strain of Gonfism was therefore very conservative, but over time he began mixing these ideas with an old philosophical tradition with lore ties back to even before Jagdis. This became the Gnostic Gonfist movement, as it had a strong focus on esoteric wisdom and one's relationship with nature, but it only attracted a handful of observers. On the other side, the villager populations of Rathnir and Eldham steadily increased, as did their influence. Now this is when an incredibly strange, energetic event happened that roped several religious traditions together into a new form of Gonfism. While some communist workers in Eldham were busy constructing a canal, an apparition of Gonf appeared that performed many miracles, carving the canal out as a natural river, making all the witnesses glow, and leaving a divine artifact. The players here excitedly espoused a conversion to Gonfism, and the enthusiasm attracted people of other faiths to join into this new movement, making it a melting pot of ideas, most notably adding the villager tradition and a Thurny monotheism. There was a flurry of theological innovation, and these ingredients mixed to form Makerism, later called the Core Gonfist Church. They interpreted much of the Gonfist canon differently than Stony's Gnostics, developing ideas about a multiverse of cosmic and afterlife realms, a monotheistic god of 4 aspects, with Gonf as the mortal aspect. There was a large canonical corpus of villager, Gonfist, and communist writings, and a highly organized church structure. In case you missed it, Minecraft Catholicism. So, we now have 2 sects of Gonfism, one led by a genocidal maniac, Stony Stoner, and the other led by a coalition of villagers, communists, and monotheists. And of course, it had to end in war. In the year 300 of Rathnir and Eldham's calendar, there in the sky appeared what was called Aristor's Comet, a harbinger of the end times of these 2 worlds. Stony Stoner realized that he had not finished his divinely appointed task of killing off all the villagers, so in order to do so, he riled up the world of Eldham in hatred against Rathnir, because Rathnir had historically colonized Eldham. Stony and Eldham invaded into Rathnir and claimed these massive swaths of land. The Makerists, with their Rathnirian ally player Anmo and his Sonite Yaists, who interestingly claim a lore connection back to a Jagdis tribe led by a prophet named Gonf, met together and voted to excommunicate Stony Stoner for his atrocities against Gonf. As all this was happening, the Eldhamites would attack communities that supported the villagers, and many innocent villagers were tortured and killed. In one instance, Stony and a militia marched upon a meeting of the Core Gonfist Church, and he attempted to arrest the Eldhamite leader named Ancap. Ancap refused to go with him, citing Gonf's word as written in their holy text. Eventually, Stony slew Ancap on the altar there, committed a massacre of the Makerists in the church, and hunted down the villagers of the city. This was the exact kind of global violence that Gonf had died to save others from, brought back by his student, Stony Stoner himself. The Makerists and villagers later discovered a small tomb that Stony had built for himself on a desert island in Rathnir. They broke into it, delved through the catacombs beneath, and found a wall of prophecy that inscribed Stony Stoner's memories and future. They walked through the wall into Stony's memory vault of Paxia, where they found his memories of Gonf, acquired an ancient bow that could be used to kill him, defeated an image of him, and discovered that he was secretly half villager. They were able to take the bow out of the memory vault into the real world and have it restored to power by the legendary dwarven blacksmith Thorgrim Stoneheart. As all this went on, the worlds of Rathnir and Eldham had been invading into each other's lands. But one faithful battle at the snowy Evermore Bridge gave the villagers and Makerists an opportunity to shoot and kill Stony. Stony flew down while fighting and chastised the Rathnirians for not surrendering. The villager Twerkish then snuck up behind him, and to avenge his people that Stony had murdered, he shot him with the ancient Paxian bow, killing him instantly. The people below could see as an apparition of Gonf came down from the heavens and took Stony to the afterlife for punishment and rehabilitation. The agitator that started the War of the Comet was killed, the Eldhamites' empire in Rathnir collapsed, and the War of the Comet came to an end. Soon after this, the prophecy of Aristar's comet was fulfilled, and the worlds of Rathnir and Eldham became dark, frozen, and desolate. Most of the surviving players migrated to the new world of Abexilas, drinking poisoned Kool-Aid to take a ride on the comet itself. What remains of Gonfism is almost entirely in the Makerists, now called the Core Gonfist Church. The Core Gonfist Church has been hit with a new challenge though, the Protestant Reformation. One Gonfist player, named Effin, recently started a revolutionary movement that demanded reforms to the Core Gonfist Church. The church rejected his theses and sentenced him to burn at the stake for heresy. Effin was tied to the stake and lit on fire, but while he burned, he was struck by lightning and killed instantly. Effin's followers believed this to be an act of instant mercy delivered by Gonf himself, whereas the core church believed this to be a divine sign that it was right to kill Effin for heresy. In this conflict, Effin's followers fled their home to establish a new secret home, and here they developed their own church of Reformed Gonfism, which follows many of the Makerist ideas of a split monotheistic god, but also emphasizes different values and stories of their shared scripture. The core church has, in response, initiated a counter-reformation, which is too recent to really say anything about. All of this is ongoing, and the future is uncertain. And that's fitting, because the Sunnite Yaists, who we talked about earlier, have received several extremely vague and ominous visions from Gonf himself that will surely determine our future. Thanks for watching. All of this is a true story on the Stoneworks Minecraft server, so jump into the story right now at the IP play.stoneworks.gg.